Thank you for joining us for the 2023 Hawaii Counseling and Advising Convening. We'd like to remind everyone that today's presentation is being recorded. Sorry about that. We'd like to remind everyone that today's presentation is being recorded and will be posted on the event website. Please keep all cameras off and all microphones muted throughout the session if you do not want to be recorded. We'd like to thank our live captioners who will be providing closed captioning for accessibility purposes. Since it is live, captions may not accurately reflect what is being said. Captions will be corrected for session recordings. Recordings and resources will be posted to the site between 3 to 4 weeks after today's presentation. If you have any questions for today's presenter, please add them to the chat box and a moderator will share your questions at the end of the session. Okay, it is my pleasure to introduce Gabe May, the founder and executive director of RiseHI Collective, a nonprofit committed to empowering Hawaii's youth. RiseHI Collective is a creative media-driven organization that highlights the stories of Kama'aina creators, entrepreneurs, and changemakers. These stories serve as curriculum supplements in schools, inspiring and engaging students while showcasing the abundance of opportunities available in Hawaii. Gabe is also a successful entrepreneur in his own right. He founded Hawaii VA Loans, the state's first VA specialized lender, and co-founded Vamba, a B2B software as a service company servicing nationwide mortgage lenders. In 2020, Gabe founded Arkapuna, a nonprofit that has made a significant impact in Hawaii's communities during the COVID-19 crisis. The organization pairs volunteers with low-income, homebound kupuna to help them obtain necessary groceries and medical supplies. Since its inception, Arkapuna has served over 500 kupuna, delivering over 9,000 essential items across 5 islands. Gabe has dedicated his career to expanding opportunities for the next generation, and lucky for us, he has dedicated the next hour or so to all of us. Gabe?
Hello, Bill. Appreciate it. All right. Want to first off say thank you to all of those who are out there, counselors out there watching this event and taking part of the session. I know you have a couple other opportunities and other sessions you could have went to, and so I'm super grateful that you chose this one. And my goal is to make it the most effective use of your time. As I get started, it's hard because I don't really get to see anybody, but I want to make sure there's actually people out there in the audience. So I got a little check-in question for all of you. I just want to, if you can just type into the screen, provide one adjective to describe how you're feeling at the start of today's conference or convening. So just one adjective. I want to see who's out there and what they're feeling for today. Go for it. Okay, we've got Kelly. She feels energized. Jana, excited. Christine, out in Waipahu, feels inspired. Love it. Sarah says that she is feeling positive. Susan, motivated. Shannon out of Cannonball High School. Go Sabres, hopeful. All right, we got a couple hopeful. Marianne saying she's ready. Awesome. Okay, that's what I wanted to hear. Interested, curious. That's exactly what I was hoping for. I didn't want to see anybody who's like, I'm kind of tired and over it. So I'm glad you guys are ready to go. And let's get started. And so what I want to do is I want to set today's agenda. This is what we're gonna do for the next hour or maybe less, but we'll see. But I want to start off with a little bit about the why behind RiseHI. Before we start getting into the meat and potato, what we do, I want to give you a little mo'olelo backstory of why RiseHI was created. Also kind of share of why we think what we're doing is different than maybe some of the things that have been done in the past. I want to share an example of our content. RiseHI is known for its media content, so I'm going to share a little bit about that, and I'm going to ask some reflection questions from our counselors. Then I want to dive into specifically one of our frameworks called Make It Happen framework. If we have time, I will share a little bit about the schools that is currently piloting RiseHI and some of the feedback from them. And then again, I'm not sure we'll get into it, but we can also discuss future RiseHI initiatives if that's what you guys want to hear about. All right. So let's get started. Bill already did a great introduction. Thank you, Bill. A little bit of my background. Kind of been someone that's been all over the place, with for-profit and nonprofit. Originally for-profit with my first business in 2007, starting Hawai'i VA loans, which we still run to today. Bill mentioned, with Hawai'i VA loans, we have a foundation called Hawai'i VA Foundation that spun off our Kupuna, which is a nonprofit that helped Kupuna during the COVID pandemic. Again, Bill talked about it. But today we're here to talk about RiseHI. And I guess for us, if we're talking about the power of creative media and storytelling, I want to start off this session with a little bit of, if you don't mind, a little bit of a backstory about myself that ties into why RiseHI was founded. Okay, so I'm going to take you back in time. This is a picture of some of my ohana, my grandparents' house. I originally grew up in Pu'unui, Nu'uanu. So if you guys are familiar with Ma'e Elementary School, I went there from second grade to fifth grade. And that's where my years, I spent a lot of years there. My grandparents lived in the corner of Waimea and Liliha Street, which the house just got torn down in the last year. So, but this is a picture back in 1987. So I was kind of dating myself. So in 1987, I wanted to make money, and I had an auntie Tomi who, bless her heart, she was about 65 years old at the time, and she used to have a booth at the swap meet, right? We all know the swap meet down in the old Aloha Stadium. And you know what she did? She used to sell posters of pop culture posters. So at the time in 1987, you can imagine what was in style was Michael Jackson, Madonna, and right before New Kids on the Block started getting popular. So you can see there's a lot of people who wanted to buy posters. And so my auntie Tomi would pick me up at like 5:30, 6 a.m. in the morning in this 1979 Chevy Nova. And you can imagine, we had to fit all these posters plus the tent, right? With the concrete blocks all in this vehicle. So we had to do Auntie Tomi had this all makeshift car, which they had no back seat. And really there wasn't even a passenger seat. It was basically all the posters were stuck in the back, and the poles would slide in from the trunk all the way to the front. And I would sit in the poles on the front seat with no seatbelt. So you can imagine back then, I don't know how my auntie Tomi got a safety check for this one, but definitely was a little bit of a hazard. But every Saturday and Sunday for about 4 years, I would work with her at swap meet, and we would sell posters, and I'd make $20 a day. Because for me, I wanted to go spend my money and buy something I wanted. And back then, 1987, there was no internet, right? We know. And so I used to love going through magazines and catalogs and figuring out what I can buy. And again, one of the things that I always wanted, I don't know if you guys recognize this. This was one of those electric board games, football board games. And it's so, the kids now would laugh at this, but the thing would vibrate and these pieces would move, and you would play this football game with it. And for some reason, I really wanted it. I was into football, and I thought this was the coolest thing. I wanted to buy it. So I was ready to go ahead and buy this with my hard-earned money, only to find out that they don't ship to Hawaii, right? And I know for those of you who grew up in Hawaii, I know you know this feeling is you want something so bad, but they don't ship to Hawaii. They ship to 48 states, but for some reason they don't want to ship it to Hawaii and Alaska. And, you look at us living in Hawaii in the middle Pacific. It was so easy to just kind of forget about us in Hawaii. And I didn't realize it then, but as I grew older, I realized that this had the subliminal messaging in this that affected me when I went through high school and went away to college. And the messaging for me was that we in Hawaii are not relevant. that we're insignificant, that maybe we're not good enough. And I grew up with those limiting beliefs. And I think part of it was because it started with they don't ship to Hawaii. Or how about, when they do our presidential elections, by the time we count our 4 electoral votes, we know that the candidates already won, and it's really our 4 votes don't really matter. And these kind of messages, I realized, kind of seeped into my mindset that, again, put limiting beliefs upon me. And for a lot of our keiki, right, is sometimes we're so distant from the rest of the continental U.S. that we feel that maybe, again, we may not be as good enough, or we're not capable of doing big things. Those of you who are familiar with this report, Aloha United Way puts out a report, I think, every couple of years, and they identify it's called the Alice report. So they want to understand who is asset limited, so very little money in the bank, income constrained, they make money, but not a whole lot of money, but they're employed, right? So they got a job, but they very little assets and living paycheck to paycheck. And roughly, in the last one, I think was like 42% of our population is considered Alice. And when we think about that, what's the effect? As our kids are growing up and they're trying to go to school, they're trying to learn, trying to better their futures, but they come home and they see mom, dad, aunties, and uncles where they're struggling, whether they're working 2 jobs, they're stuck in traffic, for a couple hours a day, and they maybe they come home and they're not happy, they're not positive, and it's easy for our kids to feel like that's their future, right? That's what if they want to live in Hawaii, that's their future. And we know, especially during the pandemic, we know that there's been a mass exodus of families in Ohana here in Hawaii that had to leave. They feel like, shoot, if I want to thrive, I have to go to Vegas. I have to go to Utah. And my biggest concern with this is what happens to the fabric of Hawaii, the culture, the people that make it special. If they all leave, what happens to Hawaii? And it is a scary thought when you think about it, right? So this is just for me. I was lucky enough after graduating from St. Louis School to go away to college in Northern California. But even in Northern California in college, I had a lot of Hawaii kids that I could kind of hang out with. So I was still in my comfort zone. But after graduating college, I had opportunity to travel. And these are, a lot of different states that I actually lived in after college before coming back home in 2003. And this is kind of for me, my learning experience of traveling was that, we are good enough. I've lived in Nashville, I lived in Georgia, I lived in North Carolina, and I've met a lot of people, and I realized, we are capable of doing amazing things, and we are good enough, right? It's really starts with what kind of mindset that we have, to help us kind of bring our dreams into reality. And so in 2016, by the time I wanted to kind of, I'm going to start RiseHI. I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but my goal is to create optimism in our keiki. I wanted to focus on how do we shift mindsets of our keiki from one state to another, starting with I'm not good enough to I'm capable of anything. Shifting the mindset from there are no opportunities in Hawaii to I can create my own opportunities in Hawaii, right? Being a driver in the car versus a passenger. And then the last thing is it's impossible to survive in Hawaii to a state of knowing that I can thrive here in Hawaii. And really that's what RiseHI is about. And the focus thing right from the get-go is how do we create optimism, right? Because we know optimism is a catalyst to action. If they don't have optimism and if it's reversed, they're pessimistic about their opportunities. And a lot of times they forget to dream. And if they're not dreaming, they're not taking action. So for us, it's about creating optimism in our kids and building that right foundation as they go along. A lot of people may know of us through social media. This is just a sampling of our Instagram. And this is where we first started in 2016, 17 was documenting stories of Kamaiana creators, entrepreneurs, and community leaders, change makers, and really finding out their stories and learning from them. And what we've done is we've curated that, and we've started sharing that through our social media. But a lot of people don't realize the next transition for RiseHI is to get this content into schools to help support our educators and counselors as curriculum supplements. And so these are some of the schools that we're currently working with. And again, this is within the last year and a half. We're really, I would say it's more of a pilot program. And we've done work with UH West Oʻahu in their business school, Waimea High School in Kauai, Maui High, we've done some work with, and then 2 middle schools, Kealakehe Intermediate on Big Island and Niu Valley Middle School. And so Kealakehe, it's being championed by one of the Teachers of the Year, Matthew Williams, and Niu Valley, Zachary Marita, another Teacher of the Year. He's been piloting this in his school. What is it being used for? Various different programs and frameworks and curriculum. Career technical education, Maui High, we've got HA, which Waimea High School is using it for. Aina-based learning, we've got a small public charter school on Hilo that was using it for there, as well as work-based learning. And then we even had Waimea High School use it for the ALPS program, Alternative Learning Program. All right. So what is RiseHI and who's part of this? And really, it's a collective of individuals. As we mentioned, it's kind of small to see, but maybe you can recognize some of these names, like Carissa Moore, professional surfer. We've got Jana Lam, who's a textile designer, Kimi Miner, who's an artist, Kuha'o Zane, right? We've got a very prominent family on in Hilo, focused on design, apparel, fashion, just to name a few. And what I wanted to do, right, before I kind of keep talking about it, I wanted to share one of the videos from Keola Raposo and Fitted. And so give you an example of what one of these videos looked like. And then when we're done, I want to hope everyone's paying attention, because I'm going to ask some reflection questions, and I'm hoping to get some participation from the audience, kind of sharing their thoughts on the video. All right. So I'm going to play this and let's get started.
And I was there to create a brand. Like, I went there focused on, I want to start a brand. I want to start the biggest brand to ever come out of Hawaii. That was my goal. My name is Keola Nakahiki Raposo. I grew up in Kahalu, King School, Castle, Windward, and then HCC. I am co-founder, creative director of Fitted Hawaii.
Entrepreneur, artist, visionary. Those are just some of the words that can be used to describe Fitted co-founder Keola Raposo. The Kahalu native first found inspiration in fashion at a young age when he began experimenting with his mom's sewing machine. Cut to today, he's the co-founder of Fitted Hawaii, a world-renowned brand specializing in custom New Era caps, t-shirts, and more. Keola has collaborated with numerous companies from around the globe, all while sharing the authentic and modern stories of Hawaii through his designs. However, his pursuit to work in a female-dominated industry is far from easy.
My friends and people I grew up with was very template. Surf shorts, slippers, fanny pack, rope chain, that was like the typical look, which is great, but I was into different stuff. And I remember wanting to influence my community through that. So my path became creating fashion, because I was like, this is a great way that I can express the language that I've been learning and I've been seeing, throughout my upbringing. And I just remember being so excited, like, oh, wow, I'm like starting this new thing. I'm actually like focusing on the creation of a career. and who knows where it goes from here, you know? There's one period where I was working 3 jobs, Tori Richard, interning, I was valeting in Waikiki, I was at Chevron. Honey Chevron was kind of a clubhouse. And I had all my patterns out, and the boys are like, wow, what are you doing? It turned from raging parties to me doing my homework. You know what I mean? And nobody wanted to hang out with me because all I would do is my homework. You know, I would make patterns. And I would tell them, I was like, oh, this is how I'm going to be successful. It's like, yeah, but when you just make guy clothes, they don't offer menswear at the program I'm at. But if I could figure out how to make women's garments, I can guarantee make men's garments. My desire wasn't to create a haute couture brand for women in Hawaii, right? My desire was to create a brand for Hawaii. So I was sitting in class, and there was this girl sitting in front of me. Carol had mentioned to her that there's an internship at Tori Richard. Excused myself from class, walked outside. I called. I said, hey, I'm interested. Mind you, I had 0 portfolio. And I went in there with some sketches, and I basically was like, I will sweep the floor if I can learn how to run a clothing company. This was December 29, 2003. Renee is on a plane coming back from New York. He's like, hey, where you at? I got an idea. You and me, we're gonna open up one hat store. Like, he already had the name and he already had the idea, right? Like, this is what we're gonna do. But he said, I need you to bring this thing to life. And he told me the name is called Fitted. I remember going home that night. I just like, you know what? I don't want to look back 5 years from now and think I should have did it. From there, it was designing all the hats, going to the trade shows. And, you know, I closed my 401k, whatever money I had in the bed. I remember two years into it, about making no money, just like thinking like, wow, did we make a bad decision? But though I wouldn't trade any of that. Like those are the experiences that bring me confidence today. You know, like, we've been there. There's no replacing experience, you know? And I wasn't very confident early on. My design sucked, you know? Like, I still keep all of my garments and all of my sketches. I want to see how far I've come, you know? And some of the things I was doing back then, I would never do now. That's all part of the experience. That's all part of my timeline. Without that, there's no way I would have gathered as much experience to get to this point now, where, you know, I can sit in meetings with the biggest companies in Hawaii and be confident that I can give them a solution through design. I cannot look at what other people are doing. I cannot be influenced by other people, because it ultimately will affect me adversely if I allow someone else's mindset to influence me. You can't see what's out there if you never traveled, or can't see how you can become that person because it's so far away. And I think if you're persistent and you're up here and you know that what you're doing is something that's good, something that'll benefit, something that's not detrimental to other people, that you can enhance people's life, their existence, their work, help them identify who they are, you have to have enough confidence in that to know that this will pass. You know, people pulling you down or saying, how you doing making women's clothes? Like, don't worry about it, it'll be good.
Okay, so that was an example of one of the media content that we created for Keola Raposo's story. Fascinating story, great company Fitted. I know when you guys are in school and you're trying to engage your kids, right? You're trying to get feedback. It can be super frustrating. So I want you guys to just take 30 seconds to just reflect on this story. Okay. I don't want you to type anything in the chat yet. I just want 30 seconds to reflect on Keola's story. And I want you to just start thinking of what were the main takeaways of Keola's story, right? What resonated most with you on his journey from, being this kid from Kahalu, going to Castle, to working at the gas station, to going to HCC to take a woman's fashion design class, to getting his internship at Tori Richards, to eventually starting Fitted in his journey. What were some of the takeaways that it really resonated with you? I want you to think about it in 10 seconds. I'm going to say, put it in the chat. And I want to see what you guys have to offer. And I want to talk about that. So I'll let you guys think through it. All right. We need some brave souls out there to share. What were some of the main takeaways you got out of Keola's stories? Go for it. Wendy said constantly evolving, motivation, persistence, learn from his setbacks. If you put your mind to it, you can do anything. Inspiring, never give up mentality, pushing forward. He had a dream. Everything was just a step to get there. Resilience. Local kids can be successful. Don't give up, right? No, this is great. You know, one of the things for me that hit home, I want to share a little bit of my personal, kind of tie this to me. Like if I was a kid, keep going, keep it going, because I want to read through it. Believe in himself, in his dream. Don't compare yourself to others, and follow his dream. So I want to tie those two things, right? Don't compare yourself to others and following his dreams. And so this video hits home for me because one of the things I realized when I was in high school was I didn't realize, but I had the spotlight effect. I was always thinking that people, I was always worried about people criticizing me or feeling like people. I didn't want to be in the spotlight, because if you're in the spotlight, you know, you do something, you put yourself out there. Sometimes you can make A, right? And in high school, the last thing you want to do is make A, right? And we know that in Hawaii. And so I always kind of shied away from the spotlight. I wanted to sit in the back. I wanted to kind of do the same thing everyone else was doing. And I didn't realize this until I traveled and I got away and I got out of my comfort zone. When I was living in Georgia, when I was 21 years old, and no one knew who I was. And I figured, shoot, no one knows who I am. I mean, I could just be my authentic self. And what I realized was, by being my authentic self, more opportunities came my way. I made more connections of like-minded individuals. People wanted to talk to me, work with me, all that kind of stuff. And I realized how empowering it was just to be authentic and be a little vulnerable and put yourself out there versus kind of hiding it because you don't want to make A. And I look at Keola's story, and he's the epitome of that, right? If you think about it, can you imagine being 19 years old, working at Kaneohe Chevron, and between 8 and 10 o'clock, it's usually slow. And so usually 8 and 10 o'clock, all the boys would come hang out, party, and it'd be a clubhouse, right? But Keola was going and taking classes at HCC, and he was taking a woman's fashion design technology class. And so he would bring his patterns to work with him. And at between 8 and 10, he'd be laying out his patterns and his pins, his bodice, and he was cutting patterns. And all of his friends are looking at him like, Keola, what are you doing? You know, and this is in Kaneohe, right? And he's like, wow, I'm doing my homework. And they're like, why are you making women's clothing though? That's wild. And he's like, well, the class that I'm taking, it's not a men's fashion design. It's a women's fashion design. And that's all they have. And so for him to keep doing what he felt he knew, if he could learn how to do this, then he could do men's clothing. And he had the courage to, instead of being peer pressured into following everybody else, he had the courage to do his own thing and really follow his gut, his na'au, and his whatever his passion, his dream was. And he was able to persevere through that social pressure. And for me, I wish I saw this when I was in high school. Then I would have learned that lesson a lot earlier, I feel. The last thing with that is I want to, real quick, I want to ask another question. Make sure you're paying attention. There was an internship opportunity at Torrey Richards, and the teacher was kind of sharing it with somebody else, with another student. What happened? What stood out there with Keola's experience when he heard about that internship opportunity? And the teacher wasn't even talking to him. So anybody can share about that experience? what did Keola do? He immediately took action. He was eavesdropping, and he says, I'm going to skip the line. Instead of waiting for my fellow student to call, I'm going to go outside, and I'm going to call Tori Richards right away, right? And he sees the opportunity, right? So instead of being reactive and passive about these opportunities, he was proactive. She said, hey, well, once you come in, well, number one, he said, I don't care. I'll sweep the floor. So for me being an employer, if I got someone who is that willing to just do anything, that's already, you're already got a plus mark on your side. And then, you know, what he didn't stop him, the fact that he didn't have a portfolio, he just bought his sketchbook, right? So a lot of times we feel like things got to be perfect or else I don't want to try for it. Keola's like, I'll just bring my sketchbook. But his tenacity, his ambition, his drive got him the internship at Tori Richards, which to this day, he'll say that changed his life, right? Just being in that environment. So, yeah, there was a lot of takeaways with Keola's story. And those are a couple of them. I want to, before we move away from Keola's story, I want to share one thing. I know we're about halfway through, but I want to share one story about Keola's story. Denise Karate, who's the vice principal at Waimea High School, she is piloting this, some of our content into their advisory class, right? How to utilize advisory class a lot better. And she played this video for the kids in Waimea and Kauai on the west side. And one thing she mentioned, she shared with me was right when Keola started talking, you know, some of the boys who usually have a hard time paying attention, they perked up in their seats. And so after the video was done, she asked some reflection questions of what stood out for them. And one of the boys raised his hand and said, you know, Miss Karate, you know, he actually sounds just like us. And that was a very powerful statement because a lot of times our kids, the examples they see, it's not as relatable, right? And with Keola, he's a local boy. He speaks Little Pidgin, you know, and they can relate to that. They can see it. And when we shared this with Keola, you know, the powerful thing is he had chicken skin because Keola said his family's from Waimea. He's got a lot of family in Waimea. So the opportunity for him to get back to his family's community was big. So I just wanted to share that. Before we move on to Keola's story, do we have any questions about anything we discussed so far? I'm going to give you another 10 seconds. If anyone has questions, feel free to type it in. If not, we're going to move on. And mahalo in advance for all the feedback. Again, it's hard because I don't see anybody. So it's good to see that we've got some feedback on the chat. All right, I'm going to move on here. Okay, so content. So RiseHI, we think of RiseHI being half creative media agency and half education think tank. You know, I mean, that's probably the best way to explain what RiseHI is. And we don't claim to be the experts in education, you know, that far from it. But we feel that we can utilize a lot of the learning lessons and stories from the people that we interview to help create video supplements that can help our educators in their classrooms, right? That's what we look at it. But our Venn diagram of where do we want to be with our content is number one, relatable. We talked about it, is we want to be able to show real people from Hawaii that grew up in Hawaii having success and having them tell their story, right? So our kids can relate. Number two, it's engaging. As you notice is, a lot of kids, they'll have a hard time just watching someone speak, but if you can make it engaging with B-roll and animation, you can bring it to life, you have a better opportunity to capture their attention. And last thing is inspiring. Whoever we interview, it's like we don't, it's not people who are just kind of born with a silver spoon and they already had it made. A lot of it is focusing on their journey from idea and bringing it to life. Right? We talked about relatable. If I see it, I can be it. That's really the whole focus of what we're doing. And then talk about inspiring is a lot of times people assume that because they have a plan that it's just going to be in a linear fashion to the end goal and bring it to life. And we know that's not the case, right? Bringing your ideas to life a lot of times is going to be a lot of challenges and setbacks. and obstacles. And the thing that we like to focus on with RiseHI is not only showcasing like Keola's successes, but what were some of his obstacles in the way? What were the challenges he had to deal with? And really normalizing that, because if anyone wants to do anything ambitious or anything like that, it's going to be hard, right? Because if it was easy, everyone would be doing it, and there'd be no worth. And so for us, we want to normalize the fact that bring your idea to life, whether you want to be an entrepreneur, a creator, or you want to be a doctor, you want to be a dentist, you want to work in, healthcare or business, whatever. As you go on, there's going to be some challenges, and there's going to be some challenges, of course, we know, as living in Hawaii, right, with cost of living. But how do you take on those challenges? And that's what we're focusing on. I'm not going to play these videos, but these are example people that we've captured their stories. So we talked about the power of being vulnerable with Kimi Minor, being a shy, introverted person at Kamehameha dorms back in the day, to really finding her voice, and the fact that when she was vulnerable with her music, more opportunities came her way. Keone Lee, he's the founder of OEV TV. He shared a lot about how he didn't realize when he was younger that he had ADHD, and a lot of teachers kind of wrote him off and saying that he's not really capable, he can't pay attention. And he found out when he's older he had ADHD, and now he looks at it as a superpower, right? Because even though he ADHD maybe makes it harder for some things, it actually helped him in a lot of different areas. So he talks about that. Tiana Gamble, who started a retail bikini store called Bikini Bird, as well as a marketing company, Creative Designs Hawaiʻi. She talks about her dreaming big, but really starting small, and really focusing on instead of opening a store right away, start a blog, then start a social media and build your audience on social media before creating a big brick and mortar business. And so she was a great story about her in that one. And really for us is, when we look at this, is, technical skills are critical for sure, right? But really we see RiseHI starting with, how can we use these stories to develop a student's soft skills, social emotional skills, soft skills, so that they can create that foundation that's so important. Relationship building, self-confidence, learning, really getting a grasp of developing a growth mindset. And again, having that resilience when things get tough. What are they going to do? Are they going to persevere? Are they going to give up? And we really feel like if we can build this foundation really well early on, then you can apply the technical skills on top of that. And then you can augment those. But if we don't have that good foundation of the soft skills, you can apply all the technical skills in the world, but it's going to be hard for them to leverage that in their careers and futures. And so that's really the kind of the mindset and the framework that we're looking at with a lot of the content that we're putting together. Okay. Before we move on, I'm going to talk about one of our frameworks called Make It Happen. And it's geared more towards building an entrepreneurial mindset. But before I do that, again, I want to stop and pause. We got about 20 minutes left. I want to see if anybody has any questions or need any clarification before we move on. Anybody? All right. We're going to move on. So one of the things that we realized is we started documenting stories in 2016. Again, we didn't really focus on trying to create curriculum or supplements. It was just more of learning and understanding from Kama'aina creators, entrepreneurs, and change makers, people who grew up in Hawaii, who had an idea and who was able to successfully bring them to life, whether it's creating a business, whether it is creating art, whether it is creating a nonprofit that serves their community. They all had an idea and they brought it to life. And one of the things that we started figuring out is when we did these interviews, we started seeing connections. We started seeing a lot of parallels. So regardless if it was Keola Raposo with Fitted or Mahina Paishan Duart, who helped start Paipaio, Heiʻia Fish Pond, and Vai Collective. Again, one's for-profit, one's nonprofit, but we saw a lot of similarities and parallels to their story. And we started kind of charting this and graphing this and really categorizing what are these themes that we keep on noticing. And we started really documenting this and putting this together, what we call our Make It Happen framework. And so these are 8 themes that really stood out when studying all these individuals that we put together in this framework. Starting off with visualizing your future, right? Really sitting down and having a blueprint of what you want to do, right? If you're going to build a house, you don't just start building. You want to get an architect to kind of build that, to get you that blueprint before you start building. Number 2, overcome your fears. A lot of times the thing that prevents someone to bringing their dreams to life is they have all these fears that are holding them back. And some of them are valid fears, but some of them are irrational fears, and really identifying that. Number 3, the power of vulnerability. We heard a little bit about that with Keola's story with instead of caving into social pressure, he was able to kind of be his authentic self and where that got him. Number 4, you can do all this prep work, but at one time you're going to have to take action, right? Liken it to like the power of a match, right? If the match is just a match, it doesn't do anything. But once you light it, it can do so much, right? Create a fire, can cook your food, it can burn down a house, it can do so much, but that's the power of taking action. The next one, think outside the box or unconventional thinking. I'm going to dive into this a little more, so I'm not going to talk too much about that. Small steps lead to big outcomes. The power of chunking big ideas into smaller steps so that you can bring it to life. Leveling up. You don't have to do it all alone. There's other people with resources, experience, capital that help you. And then last thing is perseverance to see it through. Just having that resilient mindset. Okay. We've got about 16 minutes left. I want to just do a real quick dive into this. Let me share this tab. Again, this is just one of our frameworks, and there's a whole bunch of, there's a lot to talk about, but I'm going to see what's most important. So the big thing with this framework is this framework allows for us to kind of showcase case studies of 24 individuals, all from Hawaii, that fit right into the different 8 themes. Okay. And I want to give an example of how this could look like. We have an online platform, and I'm going to share my screen. Here's an example of our online platform, and we have asynchronous online courses on this. And like, as I mentioned, I want to talk about thinking outside the box. So what does this mean, think outside the box? And I'm going to whiz through this. And there we have a introduction video. I'm going to skip through that. There's going to be outcomes, desired outcomes that we're going to skip through that. But I want to really focus on the 2 benefits of thinking outside the box. And number 1, by unconventional thinking, you've got the virality effect, the spreading of ideas. You stand out where everyone else kind of just does the same thing everyone else is doing. That's number 1. And number 2, this is where innovation happens, right? When you think of something totally unconventional thinking, this is when powerful ideas get sprouted out that you can leverage to really help take you to the next level. Okay. I'm going to skip to this, but what I want to do is I want to give you an idea of a case study we've done. So what we do a lot of times with our frameworks is we give an idea of maybe a global brand or idea, but we also bring it back to Hawaii. So number 1, we talk about Tom's Shoes. So I don't know if you guys remember Tom's Shoes. Tom's Shoes is kind of a craze back in the day. In 2006, Blake Mykowski took a trip to Argentina and witnessed firsthand the extreme poverty. And a lot of times kids were kept out of school because they didn't have proper footwear. So he developed a brand called Tom Shoes. It's shoes for tomorrow, so Tom Shoes. And his idea was if you buy a pair of shoes from Tom Shoes, they're going to gift one to a child in need in Argentina. The impact, right? Tom's has provided more than 60 million pairs of shoes to children. And he actually sold his company about 8 years ago for like $500 million, right? So he obviously had success with this. But a lot of people feel like, was it the shoe itself that was made it successful? Well, this is it's going to take about 1 minute or 1 minute, 40 seconds. I want to share, this is a clip from a podcast about Tom Shoes that talks about this. And we animated this. So this is what we do is we want to take content, but we want to bring it to life through animation. So here's an example of this. So I'm going to play it.
I had several girls over to the house or the apartment at the time in Venice. And they thought they were coming over for like this dinner party that I was going to arrange. But instead I had all these shoes on the table. And they were like, what's going on? And I was like, well, we're going to have dinner. But before, I want to show you.
To earn your dinner.
Yeah, to earn your dinner. There is no free dinner. I want to hear what you think about these shoes because I'm thinking of selling them. They come from Argentina. And I didn't tell them about the story. And as I saw them in my living room, trying them on and getting pretty positive feedback of they're cute, they're comfortable, I wear them with this. I mean, they were kind of talking amongst themselves. Then I pulled out a bunch of photos from my trip in this village, and I told them the story. And at this point, I've never seen women so excited to buy a pair of shoes. I mean, they bought like 3 pairs each. I mean, they were like telling me like, oh, I'm going to call my friend. She's got to get a pair. I mean, it was like this just like feeding frenzy. And it was because of the story. It was because of the idea of one for one. Is because up until that point, they had never been offered an opportunity to buy something for themselves that they usually feel guilty about, right? Because, I mean, women buying shoes, it doesn't always, end in happiness. A lot of it's guilt because they have too many already. This time, they had no guilt. It was like the guilt-free shopping of the century, right? So they were buying multiple pairs. They were telling me other girlfriends of theirs they would get to buy them. Some of the girls worked in PR and were telling me what stores to be in. I mean, it was just like immediately I was like, wow, we've stumbled. I mean, it was like I hit a nerve.
So the example of this was, it wasn't the shoe itself, the design of the shoe that made it popular and go viral. It was the story. It was the fact that if you buy one, a child in need gets a pair of shoes. And that was the out of the box thinking that Blake had that allowed for success in his organization, his company. And at the same time, he was able to, help kids in Argentina. So that's an example of thinking outside the box. That's great. But what about tying it back to Hawaii? And so I want to jump over to a story real quick. And we got about 11 minutes left. So I got one more video. It's about 5-6 minutes long. I want to share a video of a local boy named Blaine Apole on Maui. And then we're going to end it with reflection questions and then go from there.
There's no word, no can. Always can. You just got to figure out how you're going to do them. Aloha, my name is Blaine Apole from Maui. Graduated from Kinke Kaulike High School, and my business is Maui Crisps.
Local boy Blaine Apole is the brilliant mind behind Maui Crisps. Artisanal beef chips made right in the Valley Isle, Maui Crisps captures the taste of 808 with flavors like teriyaki, Hawaiian chili, and most recently, added an assortment of dried fruit thins to the Maui Crisp lineup. A partnership with Hawaiian Airlines has carried Maui Crisps across the U.S. Big things ahead for Blaine and his business. But did you know, Maui Crisp was created totally by accident.
We had an opportunity to take over one of my father-in-law's gas stations that my wife's brother was running at the time and didn't want to do it anymore. When we got in there, the company was struggling at the time because Costco had came in and opened their own gas station and took about 35 to 40% of the sales of the gas station, and it wasn't doing good. We weren't able to pay ourselves for about the first 6 months working there. So it was a little tough. Through the first 6 months, it was just constant looking for something different. my father-in-law would always say, you got to be different and you got to be better than competition. What are you going to do? And I'm like, okay, this is brand new to me. And it was tough trying to figure out and understand how to run that type of a business. What am I going to do different from somebody else? This is a gas station, So eventually I said, okay, let me try make poke. And the feedback was good. So I figured, okay, perfect. There's no other gas station in the state that sells poke and beer and whatnot and all your poo-poos. And it didn't stop there because my father-in-law would always say, being a businessman for 40-something years at the time, he would always tell me, you constantly got to increase your revenue because your expenses is going to catch up to that. So I kept looking to do something else different. And so I went back to the poo-poos. We did pickled onions, and then I wanted to do pipi kaula. So we did the pipi kaula, started selling good. And during the process of drying the pipi kaula, one day when we're cutting the strips, the ends would come up super thin. And I was like, it's all burnt. And I just, cutting it up, I tried it. And I was like, it feels like a chip. So let's try that again. So just something out of mistake turned into something great. We tried it again, couldn't get it consistent. So I called my friend from Foodland that worked at Foodland as a meat cutter and asked him if he could cut meat for me on the slicer so we could get a consistent thickness. So we tried different thicknesses and soaked it and dried it. Took about 2 months before I finally dialed it in. At first, I started off with family trying it. Oh, yeah, it's good. Yeah, you should try to make that. Okay. Then I went to the gas station because when I tried to sell my poke, I gave the samples to the customers, and they're the ones going to buy it. So they told me, to sell it. So we did the same thing with the pipi kaula, which now became the Maui crisp without knowing it's Maui crisp at the time. Put it in little sandwich Ziploc bags, offered samples to customers, and the response was great. They kept telling me you should sell it. Every day we would sell out at the gas station and sell out quick. Product's still coming out good. And we're nearing a Made in Maui festival that we have entered because everyone said you should go to this Made in Maui festival, which is Maui's version of Made in Hawaii, where all these local entrepreneurs, small businesses share their product with the community and visitors, and in hopes of getting that wholesale accounts and to grow their companies. We made 700 something bags. In the meantime, we're trying to keep supplying our gas station and trying to build up for the show. So, okay, we should do good. We should be all right. That should last. And my mom and my wife said, you think we have enough jerky? I said, yeah, I think it should be good. Something new, we're not sure. So we went through the first day and we looked at each other and said, oh boy, we're not going to make it. Next morning, we opened up at 8 o'clock, and I want to say at 9 o'clock, we were completely sold out. Everybody was talking about it. People were coming to the show just to see our product, just to try our product because everyone is saying it's good. And we basically sold saris the rest of the day. But that told me something huge. There's a demand for it. People are liking the product. We created something that people like. We had no advertisements. We had zero. It was just based off of word of mouth. Going through this whole process, doing something different that nobody else did, and trying to get research and information on how to go about growing it. And there's nothing there. You're just venturing into something in the wild you have to come up with your own ideas and your own designs and everything. Constantly just thinking of new ways to do things. So being with the jerky, we were successful on this ride of jerky, but it didn't stop there. We ventured into fruits and vegetables and making chips. And once I proved to myself that I created this product that nobody else had ever tried on Maui, which is brand new. And because I made it with my heart, and I cared about what it tastes like, everybody liked it. So whatever from here on out that I wanted to try and do, or whatever ideas I had, there's no stopping. There's nothing that would stop me from trying it, because as long as it made me happy, I did it the same way I did the jerky, it would take off. So I just got to stay ahead, keep pushing ahead, and just keep coming up with my own ideas and just constantly looking different avenues, and don't be scared to try something different. Try it. You've nothing to lose because there's nobody doing it.
All right. So that was another example. That was another example of the videos. again, sitting on top of the theme of thinking outside the box. I know we don't have a whole lot of time, but if you guys have any comments on that video or any kind of big takeaways that really resonated with you, please put it in the chat now. But as you think through that, again, just really going back to Blaine, a lot of times the people in Blaine's position would be like, well, Costco came in, they took 30 to 40% of our business. What are we going to do? You know, we can't sell more gas. And so I guess we can't sell more gas, then we got to shut it down. And for Blaine, really was thinking outside the box. It's not about selling gas. It's about creating more revenue. And what are other opportunities to create revenue at a gas station besides selling gas? And that's where he kind of went for. And again, it wasn't something that was automatic, came right away. I mean, he started with poke, then he started pipi kaula, he made a mistake, and he learned that maybe this is an opportunity. I'm going to test it. And I got good feedback, but I can't get the consistency correct. I'm going to call my friend at Fulan, who's got a meat cutter. So you can see how his mindset was, I'm going to figure this out, you know, and I don't know if it's going to work, and it might fail miserably, but what if it actually works out? And having the perseverance to keep having that right mindset is what got him to where he is today. And, you know, the family doesn't run the gas station. They gave up the gas station, and he's selling Maui Crisp full time to, you know, people all over the world now. And so he's a great inspiration of what's possible. And he had no background in food and consumer packaged goods. He was self-taught. So that's just an example of one of the videos within the Think Outside the Box theme. And this theme is just an example of this online course. It is an example of what comes with this theme. With that said, we got less than 2 minutes, and I'm going to stop sharing to just see if anybody has any questions, feedback, or anything like that. One thing I want to say, I want to put out on here, you can always contact us on our website, RiseHI.com. I'll put that on there on our contact us page. If you want to get RiseHI in your schools and want to work there, you can always reach out to us at RiseHI.com or email me here, and let's touch base. So here's my email address. Warren, go for it.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Gabe. Super inspiring, super interesting things. We have a couple of questions from our audience here. One of them, I think you might have just addressed it a little bit, was what if this is not offered at the school we work with? Sometimes entrepreneurship is not necessarily like part of their programs that they're offering. What options might be available to get kids connected to this program?
Good question. Well, first thing, let's figure out if we can talk to our school principal or CAS superintendent. This doesn't have to be an entrepreneur framework. So what's going on at Kealakehe Intermediate and Waimea High School, they're using it for social emotional learning. They're using it for the HA framework, right? So the videos itself doesn't have to be entrepreneurship. So there's ways we can potentially get it in there. And number two is we're on social media. If the kids want to go directly, they can go to our website, or they're probably on Instagram, and we're at Rise Hawaii at Instagram. And so they can see a lot of our content on their own over there.
Mm-hmm. Right, awesome. Another question, or not necessarily a question, but a statement, it's challenging to develop a process that encourages and fosters innovation and creative thinking within the confines of an educational structure or institution. Any advice on that?
That is a challenge, right? I mean, I know in certain schools and organizations are set up to foster, kind of this creative thinking mindset and doing things a little different. And other schools are a little bit more structured. Part of that is we're hoping some of your counselors out there can kind of get into and learn more of what we're doing, and hopefully be champions in your schools to help bring this up into schools, whether it's getting teachers involved and, hey, can you want to try this in advisory class? Let's try this. And getting feedback from students and teachers, and then be able to bubble that up to administrators such as a principal or a CAS superintendent. That's really kind of what we're going for. We're really working at a grassroots level of trying to get more and more of our content in schools, like I said, for various different curriculums and frameworks.
All right, awesome. One last question here is, since most of these are counselors, how do you recommend or envision counselors using your resources when they speak to students? If a student's interested in entrepreneurship, a lot of times it's, okay, well, now what? So what would you recommend they do, or how to approach that situation?
Yeah, well, that's something that we're still gonna have to work through and figure out, right? Like I said, I think for us is we're learning just as much as we're sharing. We're also learning with the school system. I'll give you an example. Matthew Williams, vice principal at Kealakehe Intermediate, he actually said there was a pilikia between two female students at school, and he used Kimie Minor's story to help kind of squash the pilikia between the two girls. And interesting enough, Kimie Minor went to Kealakehe Intermediate. So that's just an example of one. And some of our content right now, if you go to our website, it's open. It's available for counselors to watch and to share, right? So if you're dealing with a child or a student who perhaps is going through something, and you know some of the videos that could help maybe lift them up, or then you someone that needs a little bit of inspiration, or who is maybe unsure about their path, where they're going to go after school. Some of the content could be a helpful supplement for you. Instead of, you can share all you want about your personal experiences. Sometimes it's good to kind of get someone else and get their showcase someone else. That could be an example of one way to do it with RiseHI for now.
All right. Well, we are out of time. we went overtime a little bit. So thank you, Gabe. Very excited to share RiseHI with students, teachers, and families. And thank you all for joining the session. Please complete the session survey so we can learn about your thoughts and suggestions for the convening. Your next session starts at 11:30. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all. Appreciate it. Mahalo.